This video is going to show you how to build a to-do app using the AngularJS library. You can see I already have Angular set up here and underscore for just a filter function later on, and Bootstrap just to make it a little bit prettier than the defaults. So the first thing you always need to do when starting an Angular app is initialize it using the ng app directive. It looks like an attribute in whatever tag you put it in. And I'm not going to get too much into the technical details this first time around, but there will be future videos explaining, going into more technical depth. But for now, just take my word on it that initializes your app. So now that we have it set up, we can set up some divs with controllers. So we'll set up an ng controller, assign it to a to-do CTRL, a to-do controller, and then we'll define a to-do controller in our own JavaScript file. And it looks something simply like this. And you can see that it's just named the exact same way, and then it's going to pass in the scope. So to-do CTRL and to-do CTRL. Now that we have this set up, and you might understand the scope right away just by looking at this, but again, I'll go into scope in further depth in future videos. So if we just give a set a property on the scope of like total to-dos, set it to like 4, we can already take advantage of the binding available using double curly braces is a syntax that Angular uses of just total to-dos. So if I just refresh this, you can see that you see the value of 4, which is set here. Now, just to show that this isn't some hocus pocus, if you don't initialize it, you can see that it just shows total to-dos, the string. But you do initialize it, refresh, and you'll see 4. So going from there, just showing the number 4 isn't that great of an app. So let's actually set up a list of to-dos. The first one will be learn Angular. You're doing a great job by watching this video to get that one done. And the next one will be build an app. And if you're following along, then you're doing pretty good at that one too. Set the done defaults. So from there, now we have a list of to-dos that we can use. And the best way to use lists is to loop through them. First, let's make this a little bit prettier. I'll just make it nice and big, total to-dos. See what that looks like. Looks much better. All right, so I'm just going to set up an unordered list, set the class to unstyled. It's just a style you can use from Bootstrap. And then use the magic of ng repeat. So if you look at this syntax, to-do in to-dos, it's basically just going to loop through all of our to-dos, and then anything you bind to in here, say for example the to-do text, you can see that it magically shows up over here. So basically we're just looping through the to-dos, learn and build. You can see they show up over here simply by using the binding syntax. So let's make that a bit more useful by creating an input, which is a checkbox. And then we'll actually use the ng model directive and set that to to-do.done. Now that's going to be a two-way binding between the presentation and the controller. So once I click this checkbox, it's going to set the current to-do that you loop through to done. And then we'll set up a span and show the actual to-do.text. Now this isn't going to show much right now because when I click, nothing happens. But if I set the style of this, we'll create a class called done dash. Watch this little magic piece right here, to-do.done. So I'm actually binding to the style, or binding to the to-do.done property inside of the style. And we'll actually create our own style class here. Style file, to-do, CSS, create that and we'll call it done true. So if it's done, we'll give it a text decoration of line through and set the color to gray to make it kind of gray it out. Now when we refresh and I check one of these boxes, you can see it automatically strikes through and grays it out, simply because this is updating anytime you click the checkbox, because we set the to-do done of the current item in the to-dos array, and we're toggling it between true and false, whatever the value of that checkbox input is. Moving right along, the next thing you want to do is actually add things to your list of to-dos. So we'll set, we'll create a form, and let's just give it a class of form horizontal. Keep things nice and aligned, thanks to Bootstrap. And then we'll create an input. This time it's a text input. And we'll use the ng model again to set up the two-way binding. We'll create a new property. Let's call it form to do text. Then anytime we update this, we want to instantly update it. So every keystroke. So let's look at that right away. So you don't see anything happening yet. But the cool little bit here is if I put form to do text here, and I refresh, anything I type will instantly update. So you can see how that automatically created the binding there and updated. That'll be useful for when we click a button here to add this to our list. So let's set up this button. We'll give it a class of button. I love little icons in Bootstrap, so I'm going to use a plus icon and say add. I'll just put the add as the text. So when you click that, you see nothing happens yet because we haven't set up any sort of action for the click, which we'll do right now. So ng click, we'll call a method called add to do. Again, we don't have an add to do method yet, but once we do, I highly recommend setting up templates for these because you'll be typing these things like scope equals function quite a bit. So add to do, we can simply say scope to-dos push, and then text. If you remember, it's called the form to do text, actually on the scope object. Form to do text, and with the status of false. That should make sense, just pushing it in. So then when we refresh, we'll say something new, and we hit add. You'll see it's actually being added. I see this isn't clearing out, so let's clear out that text as well, just to make it nice and clean. So form to do text is nothing. That way when we do this, something new, something else. One thing you may notice is that this isn't updating simply because we assigned it 4. And what we want to do here is assign it to the length of the to-dos array. So if we do something like to-dos length, sorry, that was completely wrong. Total to-dos is to-dos.length. And we go in and we refresh from here, you'll see it is properly set to 2 because there's 2 items in our list. But if I add another one, you'll see it's not updating, and that's because it's only being assigned once. You want to make sure if you're doing something like this that you actually create a function, something like get total to-dos, and we can set this to to-dos length and just return that as the value. So here, instead of total to-dos, we'll just say get total to-dos, because we can use binding to the function as well. And then anytime you add something new, it will update the total value. So that's looking good. We can check these off. And it looks like the last thing we'll want to do is remove completed items. So just create a big old button here, a large button with an icon of, let's see, icon trash, I think. And we'll say clear completed. See what that looks like. Whoops. It's looking good. Just a big fat button that doesn't do anything yet. But if we set up a click for it, call the method clear completed, hop over to our JavaScript, set up the clear completed function, clear completed. And all we have to do is set the to-dos array to, this is why I brought an underscore, because I'm familiar with the filter function here. So we're going to loop through all of the to-dos and only return the to-dos that are not done. So if the to-do is not done, then return it as a result for that filter. So if we click this, we clear the completed, it'll get rid of it. Add a new one and another, something else, and a last thing. And then you can go do and go up here and start checking off the things you've completed. And since we've learned AngularJS now, we'll click that one and clear it out. So hopefully that's been a good overview for you on how to get started with Angular. It's really a great library that I'll be using quite a bit in the future. And I look forward to future tutorials explaining more details, because there's much more to learn and way more cool tricks to dive into. So hope that helps. Thanks for watching.